I'm Ellie. I'd like us to share 10 minutes of our time together, so hopefully you have a brew to hand. The key messages from this video will be to answer why the humanitarian response of the Everybody In initiative, backed by financial investment, legal frameworks and political will, did not end rough sleeping in its entirety in Manchester during the pandemic, and what we need to learn from this unique opportunity. I'm here to connect with you from a place of humanity and the value of human relationships. I work as a social worker in Manchester. The people I work with often don't have their basic hierarchy of needs met. They live moment to moment on the streets, sleeping rough for us all to see. They often live high-risk, chaotic lives in a whirlwind of deterioration and usually neglecting everything other than what people describe to me as their survival need of using substances to cope. I want to show the context in which their struggles appear. I want to peel back the layers and unveil the reality of many very much misunderstood people in our society. And I'm going to do this by sharing an expert by practice idea from the 20 years of me practicing in this field that was later backed by evidence from research. So, in 2019, the COVID pandemic hit Britain, and with the Everybody In initiative and stay-at-home COVID legislation, the streets of Manchester were empty, except for a minority of people that either refused to come indoors or presented with high-risk behaviours that resulted in them just not being able to stay indoors. I'm here to offer an explanation, perhaps why. So in my world, on the front line of social work, I meet people that share their experience with me of trauma. Big traumas, like being neglected as a child, childhood sexual abuse by people in a position of trust, brought up in care with no love or primary attachments. And that's the start. And they go on to tell me more, that it doesn't get any better. Did you know 85% of the people homeless, sleeping rough and using substances will have experienced childhood trauma? Yes, you heard me right, 85%. 95% experience more trauma from violence, abuse, sexual assaults whilst being homeless and rough sleeping. What must that world look like through their eyes? What must that feel like every day? So I don't see people that take drugs and sleep rough. I see people that are some of the most traumatised people in our society, living in trauma states of flight, fight, freeze, conditions of complex PTSD from their lived experiences. I see people with brain injuries from the beatings they've taken. People with alcohol-related brain damage from drowning their pain and trying to survive with alcohol. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is the story of everyone, but these are the stories that I hear, and they tell me they want to be heard, understood, and their pain validated to heal. Now, this is Beryl. Can I ask you to look at Beryl for a minute? Connect with her photographic journey. What are the first 3 thoughts that come to you about Beryl? Hold on to those, please. We will come back to them. Beryl is one example of the people during the Everybody In initiative that we found really difficult to house. Let me tell you about Beryl. Our team had known and worked with Beryl for 10 years. Beryl's 38 in the first photo, and she's 48 in the last photo. Beryl tells me her story. Childhood neglect, sexual abuse from a family member. Beryl lost her baby in a car accident. Beryl has a large scar on her head that reminds her of the car accident. She experienced a significant head injury from the impact. Beryl later witnessed the murder of a partner. Beryl drinks alcohol all day, every day. And she tells me She's too scared to stop drinking. She tells me she needs to feel numb, and this is why she drinks. Now, I won't lie, working with Beryl is challenging. She has fixed delusions, persecutory beliefs, paranoia, and a foul mouth. She has a history of exposing herself in public. She makes threats to set places on fire, to hold people hostage, damage vehicles, and threats of violence to staff. There were repeated obsessive behaviours with feces and the spoiling of facilities, all making it really difficult to house her. As a result of these behaviours, Beryl had 28 different temporary accommodation placements across Greater Manchester and repeated periods sleeping rough on the streets in that year during the pandemic. Now I'm going to talk to you about executive function. What's that, I hear you think? Please stay with me because it's critical we know about it if we're going to end rough sleeping. Because executive function, it's a set of cognitive processes that are essential for the cognitive control of human behaviours, like Beryl's. They are the skills that help all of us get things done, set goals, make plans, see them through. They're controlled by the frontal lobe of the brain. Now, when these processes are compromised, this is called executive dysfunction. It can be hidden and it can be hard to spot. Executive dysfunction can impact us all when we're under emotional and mental overwhelm and stress. Now, this is an executive functioning wheel. I don't know how this came into my world, but I am so glad it did. It's transformed my practice and it's changing a way of thinking in Manchester, and I want it to change a way of thinking nationally. And I'm showing you this because I used this wheel for the first time to understand the ways in which Beryl behaved, and others who the Everybody In initiative did not work for. For the first time in the 10 years we'd worked with Beryl, she was unveiled by using this wheel. The context in which her struggles appeared were diagnosed as post-traumatic stress disorder, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD, traumatic brain injury related to that significant scar on her head, alcohol-related brain damage from her years of drinking. Of course she did. In hindsight, it's obvious, but up until this point, Beryl had lived with limited quality of life, with undiagnosed disabilities and differences that affected her executive functions, and therefore her behaviour. It had been assumed by every professional that she'd had contact with, including me, that her behaviour was because of her drinking. Now, when the alcohol was removed, Beryl continued to behave the same. Now for the research to evidence this idea. Now, if you're Beryl and your child died in a car crash, and you saw your partner being murdered, and you grew up being sexually abused, and your brain's executive function is likely to struggle and prevent you from being who you want to be. Beryl's in a constant state of flight, fight, freeze and flop all day, every day. This is how trauma impacts on us. We don't live in the moment, we live in the past. The brain, body and mind are stuck. This is not a moral failing of Beryl. That head injury that Beryl experienced from the car crash, did you know 48% of people homeless reported a history of a traumatic brain injury? 90% indicated that they'd sustained that first injury before they became homeless. Beryl's attempt to survive through alcohol has caused alcohol-related brain damage. This is well evidenced by research to compromise her brain's executive function. Beryl's brain is neurodivergent. She has ADHD. This means all areas of her executive function of her brain are affected. Beryl's brain's executive functions are like a plant. They need the right environment and care to grow. So what does this mean? This means that Beryl's non-negotiable, fundamental human need is to feel safe. Safe in body, safe in where she lives, safe with those around her, and safe in the way that we work with her. So what can we do? Can I take you back to that photographic journey of Beryl? Remember I asked you to look at Beryl and note the first 3 things that you thought. What were they? Let's be aware and challenge our own unconscious bias and that of others. This is not a moral failing of Beryl. In fact, this is a health issue. What we need to do is we don't place people like Beryl in hostels, hotels, B&Bs or temporary accommodation. We place Beryl in a safe, supportive environment that meet her executive function needs. We work with her in a safe way that meets her emotional needs, and we provide social scaffolding that promotes her self-dignity and worth. After all, theorist Abraham Maslow, born in 1908, told us this 80 years ago, that human beings' non-negotiable primary need is safety. It's that simple. Can we make sure the way we speak and treat the people we work with is like the way we would our family and friends? Can we learn more about the brain's executive function that controls all human behaviours? Can we try using that executive functioning wheel with curiosity to try and make sense of the why? Can we try seeing the world through Beryl's eyes? What if Beryl's story was about to become our own story? We are all one step away from our lives being tipped upside down. It's that simple. If this resonates with you, please seek out a book, or listen, if you will, to The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Help Beryl by taking any opportunities to share this video, please. Thank you for listening to me and the people like Beryl.